Okay, this is an algebra question, question 1 from November 2021, paper 1. And this video will be just 1.1, and then you can look at the next video for the rest of this question. So 1.1.1, x squared minus 2x minus 24, that's a quadratic equation, but it's easy to factorize that, so we will do that. X minus 6 and x plus 4, negative 6 and positive 4 multiplied to negative 24 and add to negative 2. And then we set each of those factors equal to 0. You could do that in your head probably and see that the two solutions or roots are 6 and negative 4. You could use the quadratic formula, but factoring is easier if you know how to do that. But 1.1.2, 2x squared minus 3x minus 3, this one is better with the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula solves an equation in this form. It must be set equal to 0, and the quadratic formula, I don't know if you know the quadratic formula song, or one of them. I will sing it for you. It goes to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's use that formula. In this problem, a is going to be 2, b is going to be negative 3, and c is going to be negative 3. So x equals the opposite of negative 3, which is 3, plus or minus negative 3 squared, which is 9, minus 4 times 2 times a negative 3, all over 2 times 2. So we simplify inside the square root and we get 9 plus 24 all over 4, and that simplifies to 3 plus or minus square root of 33 over 4, which is in simplified surd form. But if you want to put it into decimal form, and that is rounded to 2 decimals, it would be 2.19 and negative 0.69. Oops, I wrote that wrong. And be sure that you practice putting those in your calculator, because it's easy to make mistakes when you put those in your calculator. Okay, 1.1.3 is a quadratic inequality, which is closer related to a quadratic equation. I first set it equal to 0. Still less than. I add the 4 to both sides. And now what I'd like to do is I'm trying to figure out when that is less than 0, but it's helpful to figure out where it's equal to 0 first. So x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. I could use the quadratic formula or factorize it first, and then each one of the solutions to the equation would be negative 4 and negative 1. Now I like to solve an inequality thinking about it on a number line, all the x values on a number line. And you could think about what that parabola looks like. If you are good at graphing, it will look something like that. And we can see that this parabola, x squared minus 5x plus 4, is positive, and then negative, and then and then negative, and then positive. But I'm going to show you another way to do this that doesn't require your knowing what the graph looks like, and that would be to use test points in each of our sections. So in the section where x is less than negative 4, we could say x is negative 5. In the section between negative 4 and negative 1, we could say x is negative 2. And greater than negative 1, we could say x is 0. And if it's true for these test points, it will be true for all the values in those regions. So I plug in -5, and I'm just going to plug into this expression and see if it's positive or negative. So if I plug in a -5, I get -1 and times a -4, which is certainly going to be a positive number. That does not solve the inequality. If I plug in -2, I get a 2 and a -1, and that's a negative number, and yes, that solves our inequality. Then I plug in 0, I'll get 4 times 1, which is a positive, so that does not solve the inequality. So we have our solution. It is this middle section, and that goes from -4 for x values up to -1. And I include -4 and 1 because our original inequality also included the 0. So we can write that way, or we could write it using what I call interval notation, or we could write it straight on a number line with filled in circles to show that it includes -4 to -1. Okay, and the last one from this part of the question, 1.1.4, is an equation involving a radical, a surd or a square root. And always the first step for these is to isolate the term with the square root, and then square both sides, and then solve, and then check. You must check your answers on these. It is not just for fun, because sometimes some of the answers don't work. So this square root is already isolated, so I can go ahead and square both sides. And I get x plus 28. When I multiply a square root by itself, it's just what's underneath. And then I have 2 minus x all squared. And I have to be careful about that, because squaring a binomial times itself is actually multiplying out 2 minus x times 2 minus x. So I get 4 minus 4x plus x squared. I have a quadratic formula here, a quadratic equation, so I need to set it equal to 0. X squared minus 4x plus 4 minus x minus 28. I'm getting it into the correct form. Minus 5x minus 24. And I could use the quadratic formula here, but I could also factor that, because -8 and +3 equals -24. So we get 8 and -3. But remember to go back to check to see if they work. 8 plus 28 equals, square root of 8 plus 28 equals 2 minus 8. Oop, no, that one does not work. And the other one, -3 plus 28 equals 2 plus 3. Yes, that one does work. So our only solution is the -3.